Good morning, everybody. Early morning, such as it is. Welcome to the third and last day of ICRE 2015. I'm Linda Snell. I'm one of the co-chairs of the conference. It's early, but I'm delighted to have many of you here, and I know many more will come in as we speak this morning. It's going to be a busy day today again, and I hope a very fruitful day for you. I think it's been a really wonderful 2 days so far. Thought-provoking discussions, workshops, panel discussions. As you know, we kicked off the conference with David Ash, his awesome opening plenary about the link between outcomes models of what's going on in healthcare and medical education. I really like the way he put together health systems, patient outcomes, and education outcomes. Yesterday morning, we had our plenary panel. We heard from 4 outstanding medical educators in the Residency Rediscovered session. There was a lot of discussion. I think it could have gone on for 3 or 4 hours, in fact. These discussions were from not only our 4 people on stage, the in the trenches people from in the audience also were included. So what's ahead today? There we go. So we have the plenary this morning, and following that, there's going to be a debate. Red or blue, pro or con, competency-based medical education. We're going to see 2 medical education heavyweights, Eric Hombo and Mark Walton, duke it out, and please come to that. This afternoon, ICRE 2015 will wind down. The conference closing plenary is at 4 p.m. During this inspiring final sessions, Drs. Helen Bevan and Captain John Cox will present Rocking the Boat and Staying in It, How to Be a Great Change Agent. You're going to hear about tactics necessary to engage others and really do some radical change within our systems. I do hope you'll be able to stay around for the social events tonight. We have the Physician as Wine Lover, hosted by yours truly, where I think we're going to try and develop some EPAs and milestones, Jason. That's just before we add another leaf to the petal. More importantly, there's the awards dinner for the Residency Education Awards Dinner. And tomorrow, there's the International Clinician Educator Summit, where you'll hear, if you're registered, some provocative discussions at a very high level in medical education. I would like to welcome all of the residents in the room, those residents who are here as leaders for the IRLS, the International Resident Leadership Summit. This is a 2-day event that runs within ICRE. It's dedicated to enhancing the leadership skills of residents, and it includes resident-focused workshops, plenaries, and sessions, and the very popular Resident Survival Stories, which is at 11 o'clock today. So while you explore this year's conference, stay connected with all things at hashtag ICRE 2015. So here's a look at John Sherbinow's favorite tweets from yesterday, which I'm sure you can't read, but if you're on Twitter, I'm sure you've already seen them. If you have something you'd actually like to share with us about the workshops or sessions you've attended, or the people you've met so far, you can follow us on Twitter at RC_ICRE_CIFR, or use the Twitter hashtags ICRE 2015 or CanMEDS 2015. The ICRE social channels are also available on our mobile app. So enough of the introduction. I think we're now going to get into the meat of this morning, or maybe I should say the cake of this morning. It's my pleasure to introduce to you 4 dynamic leaders who are going to speak on our CanMEDS international panel. I'll introduce them all now, and then they'll come up one by one. Presenting first is our ICRE chair, Dr. Jason Frank. He's a clinician educator who focuses on all aspects of health professions training systems. He currently holds the role of Director of Specialty Education, Strategy and Standards in the Office of Specialty Education at the college, and Director of Educational Research and Development in the Department of Emergency Medicine at the University of Ottawa. He's an Associate Professor at U of O. Dr. Frank has published and presented widely in medical education, and his research interests include competency-based education, and faculty development, curriculum development. He's known for his work with the Royal College and the CanMEDS project, and I sort of think of him as the father of CanMEDS, as he's been involved since 1994 in that. Next, we're going to welcome Kelly Caverzagie to the podium. Kelly is an Associate Dean for Educational Strategy at the University of Nebraska College of Medicine and Vice President for the Education for Nebraska Medicine. Clinically, he's an academic hospitalist, and he's lots of experience in assessment and evaluation of learners, with a particular focus on resident competence and competency-based education. He's been a leader in development and implementation of the internal medicine milestones in the US. Presenting third is Fedde Scheele. He's a gynecologist and a trainer for both undergrad and postgrad clinical education at the OLVG Hospital in Amsterdam. For a decade, he's been a professor at VU University in Amsterdam and holds positions in various national and international committees. And I hear he's going to become very soon the president of the NVMO, which is our equivalent of CAME. So congratulations on that, Fedde. Currently, he's leading a national reform project for postgrad and medical practice. Finally, we're going to hear from Marie-Louise Stokes. She's the Director of Education at the Royal Australasian College of Physicians and is responsible for policy, trainee education development, assessment, accreditation of training, supervisor learning, all of that sort of stuff. Her current projects include curriculum renewal, selection of into training, and exam quality improvement. Prior to joining the college, she worked in a number of senior roles in postgrad medical education within the New South Wales health system. So we're really fortunate today that we're going to hear from these four outstanding education experts as we talk about CanMEDS 2015, a global perspective, a journey for the 21st century competency framework. In this session, we're going to hear about the origins and evolution of CanMEDS and the framework's current role. Be sure and stick around until the end of the session when we will celebrate the official launch of the CanMEDS 2015 framework. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a warm welcome to our outstanding speakers in medical education. Jason, I'd like to invite you to the podium.
Thanks so much, Linda. Good morning, everybody. I hope you found a great dinner last night. It's my pleasure to present the results of a 3-year project that became CanMEDS 2015. And I thought maybe I would begin with, first of all, no pharmaceutical company is sponsoring CanMEDS. I thought I'd begin with this. I work in the day as a medical educator, and my evening job is as an emergency room physician. I'm an emerge doc, to use the Canadian parlance. And it's always striking that every single day I see people on their difficult day. And these are all strangers. There's a few people I see regularly, but that's a different story. Most of them are strangers. Most of them are incredibly vulnerable. Most of them are in pain in some way, physically or psychologically. And each and every one of those people looks up and is willing to be seen by somebody like me. Many of them undress. Many of them are sitting in a cold room and they're looking for help. This is our calling. And I'm always reminded of what a privilege it is to practice the discipline we have. To help another human being is such a privilege. So on what basis do these people, these are our patients that we care for, immediately allow a stranger, a physician in the emergency room, to come in, to speak to them and reveal to the physician their deepest secrets, things that they may not even tell their loved ones? On what basis do they instantly trust us? On what basis do they instantly, for the most part, accept our recommendations? They look to us for help. I think that trust comes from a perception of competence. And this perception of competence, I know, is this wonderful story of at least a 3,000-year tradition. It's one of the most magnificent stories, I think, in humankind. Our story of competence goes back 3,000 years to an apprenticeship model in which young physicians, aspiring healers, would apprentice with a master healer. So Hippocrates himself would take apprentices. I understand you got a toga with the job. Our training moved on there. The first teaching hospitals were probably Arabic. There were guilds in medieval England and in Europe. And then we progressed to more recent times. So our definition of competence evolves out of what the master clinician wants to teach or what the guild wants you to learn. And then in the 20th century, we had something that was a new construct of competence, and it was probably the psychometric era. Really, competence was determined by your score on a test, and then you could walk into that emergency room. And that's our promise as a profession. A crisis happened at the end of the 20th century, though. Members of our profession questioned whether or not what we were doing was on the right course. Are we really preparing people to serve patients well? And at the same time, in a number of countries, patients and governments were questioning whether or not the profession was doing a good job. I think to some extent that's still going on. But it triggered a series of conversations. So that conversation is part of the CanMEDS story. So let's go back to 1990. Hair was bigger for some people. There were major world events. And those events also included a doctor's strike in Canada. And this story, there were a number of people around the world all re-examining fundamentally how we train physicians. And the theme, I think, that cuts across all of those initiatives, ACME Try, the FBO project, a number of initiatives all over the world, is this shift away from supply-side thinking, what should we teach doctors today, to demand-side thinking. What do our patients need of our graduates? And a shift away from what is the knowledge to what are the abilities needed. CanMEDS is part of that story. So in the early 90s, CanMEDS started at the same time as a project called Educating Future Physicians for Ontario. An organization called AMS, Associated Medical Services, gave grant funding to both of those projects. I started about the same time. At the same time, Brown University, some medical educators there came up with this concept of reorganizing the curriculum around physician roles. I believe they had 9 or 10 at the time. FPO had 8. More about that in a minute. So the conversation changed from what's your score on our test to what are the abilities needed of a 21st century physician. The millennium approached. There were many millennium projects, and CanMEDS was one of them. And it was an exciting time. There were some really wonderful people involved, very far-seeing, and their hearts were in the right place. John Wade, Peter Tugwell, Jeff Turnbull, Wayne Weston. The CanMEDS project was born around that time, and it was born as a re-examination of the Royal College's fundamental approach to medical education. For 80 years at that point, we had focused on medical expert. Is that really all that we need to do? So we did all of these things. There's about 14 different methodologies. It took about 5 years to complete the project initially. We did focus groups with the public. To my knowledge, this is the only project that has done so. We did focus groups with nurses. We did other health professionals that were consulted. We borrowed data from the FBO project that looked at the current burden of illness in Canada and how that was shifting from acute to chronic in a big way. We commissioned expert panels, and we did a series of validation studies with graduates in practice that were 5 and 10 years out. And then we iterated with drafts. we decided that we were going to shift our language from knowledge to competencies. And in fact, we needed a framework of competencies so that people could remember what we were espousing our most important abilities for graduates. This is where CanMEDS came from. So we borrowed the roles concept from Brown University. I think they had 9 or 10 roles. FPO had 8. And if you look at the CanMEDS project, it potentially could have had 10, 13 components. And then there was this medical student who was the research assistant on the project, and he had read this paper in psychology called The Magic Number 7 plus or minus 2. And that's why we have 7 CanMEDS roles. Our initial release of the CanMEDS project was this linear list you can see on the left-hand side of the screen. But we immediately got a reaction from the profession, and it was partly a bit of outrage. What do you mean I'm only 1/7 a medical expert? Yesterday I was 100%. There was something, it was pushing, it was triggering a gut reaction in some. And so on the back of a napkin, a guy named Jeff Turnbull rewrote the way we portray CanMEDS, and it became kind of a diagram. Some call it the CanMEDS flower. We call it the CanMEDS diagram, the CanMEDS figure. And the idea was to portray this overlapping set of abilities. And at the center, medical expert, that's central to our identity. In 2005, we revised the framework after releasing it and incorporating it into our standards and actually using it. And we wrote it to make it more user-friendly for program directors and others that adopt the framework. And something magical happened. People started to use it around the world. And to the best of our knowledge, as of now, about 50 jurisdictions use CanMEDS spontaneously. So let me tell you the CanMEDS 2015 story. We promised that we wanted to keep CanMEDS relevant. We never wanted it to become anachronistic or out of date. At the same time, we also promised educational directors worldwide that we wouldn't change it so often that you'd burn effigies of all of us on your front lawn. We avoided the paperwork. So our second major revision of CanMEDS started in 2012. And we knew that there were new themes emerging in healthcare and in medical education. In fact, we commissioned an educational scientist in our group, Elaine Van Mel, to do this wonderful white paper that she called Emerging Concepts. You can find that and download that off our website. And it just was a survey of all of this emerging discourse through the medical education literature and through grade literature around the world. We wanted to make this new version of the framework even more practical, even more accessible, and if possible, even more streamlined, so that everybody who's interested in using our framework would find it easy to do so. We also realized that we wanted to help people map the use of the framework across the continuum of medical education. CanMEDS is not a residency education framework. CanMEDS is a continuum of medical education framework and was always intended to be so. So we chose the concept that was rapidly emerging in the world, and that's the concept of milestones, to organize a stepwise progression of each and every competency in the framework. We have this wonderful team of people that we recruited over the last few years, and we call them the CanMEDS clinician educators. They orbit closest to our Royal College, and these are a group of people with the skills of still being a clinician with one foot in the clinical world, interacting with their colleagues on the front line, and always with their patients in mind, and one foot in the medical education world with special expertise in education. And it's this group that conceptualized the pathway to the new version of the CanMEDS framework. We have a wonderful manager in our CanMEDS team named Cynthia Abbott, and she operationalized that approach. So we said, we really want to do this right. Let's make this a world Delphi of sorts. So we commissioned all of these working groups. There are a lot of them. And each and every one of these expert working groups included multiple physicians of various stripes, lay people who have a special expertise in that area or a special interest, medical students and residents. It included people from the front line, and it allowed us to give them a digital box of things to look through, feedback on that domain of CanMEDS, the latest literature we could find, relevant emerging concepts. And we gave each of them a challenge. We said, please bring CanMEDS up to date, make it great, and re-examine the language. We have an overarching national advisory committee. These were wonderful leaders in medicine from a number of institutions, and they actually steered the project. They guided it, they gave feedback, and the question in particular we asked them was, which directions would be most useful from your perspective, your organization's perspective? The CMPA was there, the Canadian Medical Association was there, the medical schools in Canada were there, the regulators were there, the Medical Council of Canada were there, the residents were there, the medical students were there. It was wonderful. We had a CanMEDS integration committee that really was this tiny group of editors that agonized over every draft. I just want to highlight a couple of things that were commissioned in this design. We realized that we needed to find out what the latest was in every aspect of CanMEDS, and a couple that weren't really in there very well in 2005. So we commissioned a patient safety and quality expert working group, chaired by Brian Wong. We commissioned a e-health working group, chaired by Kendall Ho. So we had a number of new groups. We also commissioned an international advisory committee. Many of you are in this room. Thank you so much for helping us understand how CanMEDS is used around the world. This is our framework, it's our language of what we aspire to physicians to be able to do, and you helped us see it in a number of new ways. All of these groups reported back multiple times. The project also included a number of surveys, and we basically posted a draft 4 times over the year 2014. And we asked the whole world to comment on it. All of those comments were collated. The team did an amazing job of analyzing and by coding all of those comments. 2,500 comments approximately that they coded over the course of the year. In the surveys where people gave numerical scores, more than 10,000 survey data points, all of which were collated, analyzed, created into a report, and fed back to those expert working groups. Comments came from 14 countries in the world. So this is what happened. We created this new version of CanMEDS. We call it CanMEDS 2015. More than 220 authors contributed to this work. We had all of this activity. The staff have calculated more than 600 hours of meetings. 7 surveys went out in total over the course of the last 3 years, 190 web and teleconferences that they administered. The consensus produced the book that is available to you all, free of charge for anybody to use. On the back cover is the 12 organizations that have endorsed CanMEDS. And it's a lovely example of how we can all align with each other. So here's the high-level changes. What's new in CanMEDS when you go back to your country, and this framework is an example? The streamlined language. The framework is actually 1/3 shorter. We moved and revised enabling competencies and key competencies, and in fact, we agonized over them. You need to know, if there's something in here that makes you mad, we agonized over every word as to where it was positioned. We were very respectful of people's perspective. Patient safety and quality is heavily emphasized. The evidence that came forward said that quality science has moved on, and there's an imperative for us to respond. The vision of CanMEDS 2015 includes a view that every physician in the world should include the science of safety and quality in their everyday practice. Someone said to me the other day a phrase that I like. In the 21st century, care includes quality. E-health was woven through this. Technology's changed. The way we interact with patients is changing. And so Kendall Ho's group wove some words through a number of roles. We also explicitly called out and emphasized something, a concept that we all do and we always have done around care transitions for patients, handover. Handover is explicitly part of Collaborator, and we'll show you more about that in a second. Endorsed by 12 major medical education organizations in Canada, and to try and achieve that conversation about how do these competencies progress from a medical student on into the end of practice, we wrote milestones. We asked every group to articulate how each competency progressed in a stepwise way. So there are generic milestones for each and every enabling competency in CanMEDS, free for anybody in the world to use and adapt. Okay. Those milestones are written in this format. These are the stages that the Royal College in Canada is adopting for its new medical education system. And it progresses through 4 stages of residency and then on through ongoing practice. And so that's the way you'll see the organization of our milestones. So how about a few highlights, role by role? When you go back to your home program, you'll be able to say, this is what I heard, this is what's changing. Some things will be very familiar. They've been reframed, but the essence is all there. So let's do a little tour. Medical Expert was chaired by Farhan Banji. Some prominent authors include John Charbonneau, Mark from University of Western Ontario. Mark, sorry? Okay. Medical Expert was essentially very similar, but some streamlined language. We've introduced the concept of complexity and some ambiguity that sometimes is present in diagnosis. Patient safety at the bedside is explicitly woven into the medical expert role. Other things were moved to milestones. Communicator, chaired by Alan Neville, prominent work by Pseudo JG, was reframed, but the essence is still there. Communicator focuses on the doctor-patient relationship, or the relationship between a doctor and a patient's family. The competencies were rewritten and very much focused on the therapeutic relationship. Here's where e-health also came in. Collaborator, led by Denise Richardson, completely rewritten, handover woven in, and some recent literature around relationship-centered care. And a new concept that Denise calls collaborator intelligence was woven into the design of this role. So some similar wording and some similar concepts, but reframed. The group that led the manager expert working group very quickly came back and said, it's the 21st century and we need to change the title of this role. And this domain was rewritten as physician as leader. This was the single most controversial decision of the project. The feedback we got was entirely mixed. On one hand, we had those who feared that having physicians call themselves leaders is a return to the old days where physicians saw them at the pinnacle of a pyramid and everybody else worked for them. And that was not the intent of this group. This group said it's not about physician as the boss, it's about the physician as a change agent, making healthcare better and recognizing that we're all stewards of a public service. So it's about contributing and creating a better healthcare system. Leader has a number of competencies. So once again, working in the organizational structure of the healthcare system, stewardship of healthcare resources, very much apropos to the choosing wisely movement around the world. We explicitly made a key competency of physicians developing leadership skills, the ability to bring about positive change in healthcare. And as well, managing ourselves, a practice, our careers, managing our time. Patient safety in the healthcare system lives here. Health Advocate, led by John Charbonneau. This group completely rewrote Health Advocate. They wanted to make it more explicit and more accessible for everybody around the world. And we recognize that most of the feedback where people tell us they struggle with using CanMEDS is really around Health Advocate. So the concept was rewritten, and this was streamlined to 2 key competencies: responding to an individual's patient's health needs, and responding to the needs of communities and populations. Scholar. Denise Richardson also chaired this group with Anna Oswald, and we actually had 4 subgroups that dealt with lifelong learning, that dealt with critical appraisal, that dealt with research competencies, and dealt with physician as teacher. And each of those reported back and rewrote their competencies. This whole role has been reframed, and it's about demonstrating a commitment to excellence in the scholarly aspects of medicine. Lifelong learning was updated with the latest science about how physicians do that effectively. Teaching was rewritten with less jargon. Research was completely rewritten by that group under Bart Harvey. And the critical appraisal group came back and said, critical appraisal is so 1990s. And they said, it's really evidence-informed decision-making, thank you very much. So they rewrote that too. Here's the key competencies of the Scholar Rule. For each of these, there are milestones that progress across the continuum that you can find. Last but not least, the professional role chaired by Linda Snell with two subcomponents. One was really focused on professionalism and professional identity, and Linda led that, with prominent contributions by Dick and Sylvia Cruz, Schiffer Ginsburg, and another group led by Leslie Flynn that really dealt with physician wellness. When we looked at the world's evidence, we realized that sometimes when physicians get into trouble in practice, when they demonstrate discompetence, sometimes it's actually a physician wellness issue. Burnout is a prominent component of our profession's reality. This group made wellness explicit. There are a set of competencies to achieve. So once again, physician as professional in the CanMEDS framework is a series of commitments, including a commitment to physician health, wellness, and sustainable practice. This is what the milestones look like in our documents. And so it's a giant table, and for each stage of a physician's progression, you don't have to scratch your head and wonder, how will I teach professionalism at this level? There's a statement that helps guide you to what were some possible expectations you might want to frame around how professionalism looks at that stage. And then what's beyond that, what's before that, for each and every one of our enabling competencies. Instead of handing out a very large book with a very long table, we invite you to go to this website, CanMEDS Interactive. You can find it at canmeds.royalcollege.ca. And digitally, you can just arrange and configure the framework as you wish. You want to download the framework, it's there, it's free for anybody in the world. If you want to reconfigure it so you just see the milestones and for one enabling competency, no problem. You can do that and then export it to a document for your own teaching session. This is free for everybody. So this is what we have. We have a renewed CanMEDS framework. We also have a renewed diagram. And by the way, there's a bit of a story with that. We thought we'd have a 2-minute conversation at one of the summits with all the Canadian med ed leaders about the diagram. And then that turned into a 90-minute hotly heated debate. And there are many of us who felt that maybe the center of the diagram should be changed. It should be professional or professionalism or physician, and that should be different than medical expert. So we took this seriously and we commissioned a series of focus groups with the profession, with medical students, residents, regulators, practicing physicians, and the public. And we asked all of those groups about the idea of CanMEDS and how we would articulate it. And then we surveyed all of those groups. And in the end, they said, don't change my diagram. We had no idea how emotive this figure had become for so many. So for hundreds of physicians, this has become part of their professional identity formation, just like in the professional role. This figure represented them. I am not only a medical expert. The intrinsic roles inform my 21st century competence. But then we had to make it look like the 21st century, so we worked with a graphic artist, and that's why it looks like this. So what? So some group of doctors in one country and maybe 13 other countries had a conversation for a few years. How nice. So what? There are critics of this framework approach that we've been talking about. And by the way, other countries have wonderful frameworks. The Scottish Doctor, ACGME competencies are very closely related, and others. The RACP has a nice version. RACS has a nice version. There are a number of publications that object to CanMEDS. They object to what is sometimes called the ticky-boxy thing, making a list and then somehow that substitutes for competence. Or they see CanMEDS as a way of somehow shoring up power for a profession. Others have just written and said, we don't get it. What are you trying to do? And we have a wonderful journal editor who keeps on reminding us that he can't remember even how many roles there are. We respect that discourse. We just respectfully disagree. Then there are those who think we should just let it ride, man. Just let them go to med school. Everybody will come out okay on the test. We don't think that's good enough for the 21st century. We think in the 21st century, our patients deserve that when one of our physicians walks in the room, they are competent. And 21st century competence is more than the physical exam. It's more than prescribing. It's more than a procedure. It's more than wonderful communication skills that are therapeutic. It's more than being able to work with the other professionals effectively for that patient's care. It's more than the ability to keep up to date. It's more than teaching the person beside you. And it's more than displaying professionalism and sustainable practice. It's more than demonstrating leadership so that every patient benefits from the healthcare system. It's all those things. When in the focus group with the public, we had some wonderful quotes. We said, which of these are important to you as a patient? They're effective in a team, they have great communication skills, they're very skilled and up to date with the literature. And the answer from some of the focus groups was yes, all of the above. We want it all, and they deserve it. That's the basis of the trust. When all of us walk into that room, the patient's in a gown, they're vulnerable, and they're seeking help. There are few more noble uses of our time than helping another human being in that way. But it's our profession's responsibility to ensure that the person that walks in that room is effective at treating that patient. So this is CanMEDS 2015. And in my opinion, without a framework that articulates what we're trying to achieve, our profession would have a free-for-all. And I truly think there'd be migration back to only medical expert all the time. And these are just words, but from our generation of medical educators, this is our best foot forward. So CanMEDS is our declaration of our aspirations for the next generation of physicians. It's our articulation of our commitments to our patients. And I don't think it's too bold to say that this is our legacy to humankind. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jason. Kelly, would you like to come up and join us on the stage?
Thank you very much, Linda. Thank you for the opportunity to spend a few minutes with you today, bringing a perspective that I bring coming from the United States. First, I would like to congratulate Jason, Linda, John, and the rest of the Royal College for the phenomenal work that went into revising and developing CanMEDS 2015. What I hope to try to do is to describe our journey a little bit in the United States, and I think it reflects what has happened in CanMEDS to date. I'm going to try to compare the frameworks, maybe in a little lighthearted fashion as well, but really try to explore the purpose, the utility, and then the limitations of the frameworks. And a lot of this will go upon what Jason has already, will go off of what Jason has already commented upon. Again, I have no disclosures. So in the United States, we're actually one of the few places, it seems like, that doesn't use CanMEDS as its competency framework. We have 6 general competency domains, which are articulated by the ACGME, which is our accrediting body, and you see them listed there. The competency framework journey in the United States began in 1999 in what was referred to as the Outcomes Project, where we defined the general competencies with the idea of having an increasing emphasis on the educational outcomes as opposed to the process. The general competencies were implemented in 2001, and we had to try to translate those into specialty-specific competencies. And then starting in 2002 and for many years thereafter, residency programs were charged with executing upon those competencies and incorporating them into their curriculum and into their assessment. Execution being the word there because as many program directors wanted to actually execute the general competencies. The reason being is because they are unclear and complex. What exactly is systems-based practice? This led to significant difficulties while assessing and evaluating residents. And ironically enough, the Outcomes Project led us to the conclusion that we couldn't identify the outcome. And that moved us forward into our Milestones project, which really began in late 2007 and 2008. It's similar to what CanMEDS is providing specific definitions of general competencies using developmental steps We defined the abilities of residents progressing through training and began reporting of these milestones as part of our accreditation process in 2014. So if I compare the two competency frameworks together, you'll see that there are similarities, right? The medical knowledge and medical expert, again, tend to link together. Both possess communication, both focus on professionalism, but there are also differences as well. So I ask you, which one is better? So if we talk about a graphic, or what I've learned this morning is the figure, you have the flower. We have nothing. Obviously, yours is better. So let's look at the use of fancy words. You have health advocate, but we have systems-based practice. I would argue that we win that one. How about contributors, right? You had worldwide influence in the development of CanMEDS, and we just had the states. I would argue you win, and for those who are interested, Nebraska is the red spot in the middle of the United States, if anyone is interested where that is located. What about the titles? So you have roles. That's pretty cool. But we have competency domains. And if we're focusing on competency-based education, I would say we win. And finally, the rollout. So pretty soon you'll discover that there's cake. We roll out with a whole bunch of nothing. Okay. You win this one as well. So which is the best framework? Is it the Royal College CanMEDS, or is it the ACGME General Competencies? That one's a little bit more difficult to determine. So let's pause real quick and talk about what is a framework. It's defined as a basic conceptual structure, right? I would argue, however, that they're simply words on a page, albeit they're very, very important words, because as they actually define the expected outcomes. They provide the necessary structure and organization for curriculum, assessment, and feedback. Harken back to David Ash's talk on Thursday, where we are trying to move, and our journey is moving from process to outcomes, moving from focused on the competencies into the outcome of actually having a good doctor. And I would argue that without frameworks, it turns into a thumbs up, thumbs down decision, and that's going backwards, similar to what Jason had commented about. But with frameworks, it actually provides us an opportunity to provide guidance, feedback, to have appropriate assessment, and help a developmental journey. This is a figure that Eric Warm used yesterday in his talk. Just to remind us, this is really what we're aiming for. And we need frameworks to be able to do that. Frameworks, however, are not without their limitations. So I would argue I could take the collaborator role, and take the competencies, the key competencies and the enabling competencies, and I could have a resident or a physician do every one of these things very appropriately and still not be a collaborator, right? So just doing the things on the list. And again, Jason's work and his work highlighted that particular role. So they're not without particular limitations. So again, which framework is better? Again, we talked about that frameworks are limited. To me, it's very difficult to take a complex profession, and we can't codify that or capture that in a manuscript or a book. We could write all of the things down that a physician needs to be able to do, and they could fill this room, and I would argue there's still going to be things that are missing. Because as Jason pointed out, the perspectives change. They change based upon context. Should the center of the flower be medical expert? Should it be professional? Or should it be a patient? Again, back to the point that the framework is just that. It's a framework. So I want to, again, congratulate CanMEDS 2015. Again, this is a very important step in the ongoing journey towards outcomes. It defines what we expect of our profession. It's a platform for curriculum assessment and feedback, and particularly congratulate the Competence by Design, because that embraces the continuum, which is something that we are still struggling with in the United States. The next step in our journey is to really keep our eye on the ball about focusing on the outcomes. Again, the competencies and the frameworks really still focus upon the process. And that's not unique to CanMEDS, that's ours as well. We should focus on assessment that synthesizes competencies in context and ultimately get us to the outcomes that we seek. Keep our eye on the ball and focus on the outcome of good doctor. And we should avoid applying frameworks beyond the organizational principles. Again, being rigid to them and hearkening and saying that these are the correct ones, I think really lends us to sets us up for failure as we proceed in our journey towards those outcomes. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you very much. Fedde, you're going to give us an international perspective from across the pond.
Thank you very much. For me, it is an honor to speak here at the release of the CanMEDS 215, and for that I would to bring in some tulips. The tulips as a sign of a celebration. And also from a Dutch perspective, I can tell you that CanMEDS 2015 is for us energy for the development of competency-based medical education. And I can't tell you how important it is for countries like ours to have a language. CanMEDS for us is a language, a vision on how to perform healthcare and teaching. And like Chris Watling yesterday was saying, it's about philosophy of teaching. How do you look at the way healthcare professionals should be taught and should work? So the CanMEDS, through the years, has had a tremendous influence on the way we teach and how we design our curricula. And now the 2015 project has brought us all kind of adds. For example, the educational continuum that we always gave relatively poor attention. So we're going to do better on this kind of things. And for international use, you can frankly say this is the best validated framework for teaching health professionals. So where should we go from here? And I would like to tell you about two processes that are dominant in the Netherlands and perhaps in several other countries. The first process is the change management process, because you can have a brilliant document like this CanMEDS 2015, but it won't sell itself. It has to be sold in carefully designed change management steps. I won't go in detail about that, but the second one is more or less intertwined with this change management. It's about health systems innovation. That is the focus of what I shall say about the next steps in the use of this framework. CanMEDS provides us building blocks for a more holistic teaching. The more holistic teaching, you have heard a lot about the EPAs. That is an example of more holistic teaching, but there is more. Health systems innovation is needed in almost any country. We all have problems around the care of the elderly, patient safety, cost consciousness, and this kind of stories are overarching themes that should be brought in residency training, and CanMEDS provides the building blocks and the language to do that. For example, in the Netherlands, we have a large project on cost consciousness in training to make sure that this continuous rise of healthcare expenses is also addressed by the professionals themselves and not only by the government. So residents are taught to know what their diagnostic and treatment options cost. They know how to look at the value of what they give as patient care, and they work with the Choose Wisely project. As you know, we love this kind of Canadian inventions and all this spiritual stuff from Canada. We like to import that to the Netherlands. Once more, going back to this health systems innovation, we all need it, and it loves the CanMEDS framework. And the CanMEDS framework loves health system innovation if you use it in that way, because it will become obvious that these roles have a role in quite urgent matters like the patient safety, care for the fragile elderly, cost consciousness. Okay, where are we now? We're making steps. The step one is the adoption of the CanMEDS framework, and that is all done. And CanMEDS 2015 even better, so we're very happy with that. The next step is translation to a more holistic teaching approach with these building blocks. And the third step, and that is a new step, is a well-designed structural invasion in the clinical workplace. CanMEDS should be of every day and not of an academic half day. So, for example, the meetings that we have during training about pathology, about radiology, that's great, but we don't have meetings about the problems in shared decision making. We don't have meetings about the value of the work, the outcomes of the work that we have delivered. This is a translation of CanMEDS, and we have that need for these things in every day. And as a final goal, I will be happy if CanMEDS 2015 is translated into a well-designed hidden curriculum. That is in the Netherlands our goal, and it will be part of health systems innovation. And obviously essential that you are taught these roles, that you use these roles, but in a holistic sense. Well, finally, I would like to finish off with the congratulations made to Jason Frank, Linda Snell, and the fantastic team you have, because I'm jealous of this great group of people working on such important stuff. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Fedde. Jason, we've made a mistake. We should have told the graphic artist to choose a tulip. Okay. Marie-Louise, welcome.
Thank you and good morning, and it's a great pleasure to join the panel. A global perspective, but from a particular part of the globe, in the Southern Hemisphere and specifically Australia and New Zealand. And what I'd like to do in very rapid time is to do a time transit through changes in physician training, 40 years in about 2 minutes, but really to illustrate the impact of CanMEDS in our journey at the College of Physicians. So we'll launch straight into it. We'll go back to, before I do that, I don't have any affiliations to declare. Back to 1976. This was the documentation for physician training, the college for the advanced training in specialty, subspecialty medicine. And when I dug this out of the archives, I noted that it was a very slender volume. And in fact, the description of each specialty training program ran to about 1.5 pages per specialty. And the example here being cardiology, and this was everything that there was about cardiology in the training in terms of the description. So the key is, I think, here, which is essentially that within 2 years, and notice the attention to the time there, that they're going to provide training and experience in all facets of clinical cardiology in a period of 2 years. And then what is that? And you can see it down below. It's clinical cardiology, diagnostic techniques, applied medical sciences. So that was it. Nothing about what you had to know, what standard you had to meet. It was all implied that if you did this in the 2 years, you would develop the requisite skills. So moving right along to 1987, and you might ask, what changed in that time? And the answer is not much. So we're going to continue on to 2004, and that's when we do start to see some real changes happening in the content of the training program. And of course, as Jason has described and Kelly, a lot happened in the intervening period between 87 and 2004. There were a lot of major reviews of medical education internationally. We had the development of the CanMEDS 2000 project and the first CanMEDS framework, the ICRE competencies, major changes to the training system in the United Kingdom, and also in Australia and New Zealand, a greater interest in college-provided training and greater demands for accountability and meeting standards. So it's a real period of change. And so here, in this 2004, we see for the first time the word curriculum, which is quite, an interesting point to note. We now see for the first time mention of actual content of what's the objectives of the training program, what trainees are meant to know and be able to do. And in fact, in this version, the CanMEDS framework was included as is. 2008, the college evolved more and defined more the curriculum requirements for each of the training programs and a whole curriculum on professional qualities. So that led to greater description of the learning objectives. In fact, compared to the 1.5 pages in 1976, now trainees have 2 whole books for each of their training programs. The problem being how to make sense of all of that and how to make that work in the workplace. And that's where we are now, embarking on a major review of all of our curricula around an integrated framework there. That's our framework, which is very similar to the CanMEDS. And it is underpinned by a practical workplace-based curriculum built around competencies, competency-based progression, and so on. So that's the journey we've been on. And I think in summary, what you can see is the strategic shift has been from time-based training requirements to a competency-based training and progression hybrid model, I call it. Tacit standards, where you sort of inferred what was required of you, to quite explicit standards, from the narrow focus on the medical expert domain to a broader focus on all domains of physician practice. And I see that CanMEDS has been enormously influential in each of those strategic shifts. Finally, I think another important shift that we have been thinking about and talking about for a long time, and this is this move from a focus of pre-fellowship training, so when you're in training versus when you're in practice. And that idea is going, and of course we talk about now lifelong practice and learning. And that we're all in practice and training, just with different intensities and with different objectives at different stages in our career. And this is the concept of the continuum. I have to say though, I think this is, for me, the most impressive thing about the CanMEDS 2015 framework is not only is it moving to competence by design with incorporation of explicit standards and milestones, it's linking those specifically to this continuum. So I think the CBD is a good acronym. It's either the competence by design, but the continuum by design, effectively. And I just think this is a game changer. It is truly awesome, I think is the word I'm looking for. And I say that because I think about how this is going to be implemented. And that's where you take the deep intake of breath. I mean, you are all here on a Saturday morning in the beautiful city of Vancouver, sitting in a lecture theatre because you care about medical education, you are interested in it. The big challenge, I think, for all of us is how will this present to our colleagues back in your workplaces? How will they respond to this, given that they trained in the old system? And I was trying to conjure up the potential reactions that one might get to anything like this. And I think this is inevitable, that this is going to happen. But it is so critical that we engage the hearts and minds of our fellow supervisors who are pivotal to the whole training system. And I think that is the key challenge, winning the hearts and minds and engaging them. And to help us do that, I think we invoke the great Benjamin Disraeli, which is about the secret of success, or the key to success is consistency of purpose. And that's the purpose that Jason has so beautifully outlined, which is the whole reason for medical education is to serve the community, to serve patients, their families, carers. It is to provide safe and effective care and to contribute to their health and well-being, and we must never lose sight of that. But we also know, and from Dr. Ash's talk 2 days ago, that how we train makes a big difference to that, and a lifelong difference. So we must pay attention to that process of training. In fact, the community trusts the profession that we are already doing that. And I think on that note, I'd like to commend the CanMEDS team for the careful thought and consideration and the attention they have paid to the process of training in building the CanMEDS 2015 framework. You're thought leaders. You set the benchmark for all of us, and your collaboration is outstanding. So I have no doubt that you will continue to be globally very influential, and it's a great privilege to be here today. And congratulations. Thank you. Thank you, Mary.
So thanks to all our panel members. We have a few minutes for questions, discussions, slings and arrows, congratulations. Maybe while people are potentially walking to the microphone, I could ask if any of our panelists have any comments about any of the other presentations that they've heard this morning. Jason?
Just very grateful for everybody's presentation, and I loved your humor and I loved your sincerity. And one of the things maybe all of us touched on that we could maybe just to call out and reinforce is that these are just words. They're words we agonize over for 3 years, but they're words. And they're not real until each and every one of us is in clinic or in the OR and using the concepts that are behind the words. That's when they're real.
Thank you. Fedde?
Well, one of the striking things of the speech of Kelly was that he finished off with the remarks about the flexibilities of this kind of systems, that you have to keep working on it, have to keep looking at society, of what's new in education, and ask yourself, what's the next step, where should we change? Of course, with the birth of a new project, you hope to be ready for a lot of years. But I think that is a challenge to keep on looking what is our environment asking from us. So,
Thank you.
Can I just add, Linda? Fedde,
No.
you didn't say what the name of the Dutch project is. Come on.
yeah, the Dutch project, we always make jokes about the Queen, about important people, the Pope. So we always will also make jokes about CanMEDS because it's important. So we had a Can Better project, and that is the project at Health Systems Innovation. But it might seem a bit arrogant, so I would not, but it's meant as a joke. Thank you.
So the challenge is, Marie-Louise, maybe you'll have to have a Can Best in Australia. There's a comment from the audience. Please let us know who you are.
Stan Hamstra from the ACGME in Chicago. Thank you very much. I have a question for Marie-Louise. I find this fascinating about how this framework has been migrating around the world and adopted in different jurisdictions. And I just wonder, what was the process that you went through from 2004 to today to develop your own take on this framework? Did you have your own internal focus groups within Australia? Did you find that some of the language really needed to be refined specifically to your population to meet the healthcare needs of your population? Was that a driver, or was it more theoretical and conceptual? And what kind of lessons can we learn for adopting and modifying this great framework around the world in different jurisdictions?
Thank you for the question. I think the important point to make is the spirit of the framework, if you will, is very similar. It's covering those intrinsic roles in addition to the medical expert roles. And I think the decisions taken locally about what makes more sense to the local setting, and covering things for us, for instance, cultural competence is a really big issue in Australia and New Zealand. It absolutely has to be there. So and sometimes it's the wording, if it's written as a role rather than an area or a domain. As it is, just words, and you tweak them to make sense in your context, but I would argue that they map very, very well, and the intent is the same. And we're continuing to evolve and tweak them as well, so we'll see if it's helpful. Thanks.
Thank you very much. And then back to Jason and the others then, what can we learn from Australia? I think the cultural competence one is the one that stood out to me, and I just wonder, I know you're not going to change it tomorrow because we're just launching it, but how does that conversation take place over time?
Maybe I'll comment, and then Fedde, I think, wants to jump in about their adoption. You know what? and this job is cool because I get to travel around the world and be a bit of a cross-pollinator. And there's a Saudi version of CanMEDS, and there's CanMEDS in the Netherlands, and there's CanMEDS in Denmark, there's CanMEDS in Germany, there's a couple people in the UK, and South Africa's adopted it, and it's really, really interesting. And I don't know how to write this up, but there is something that's a cultural layer on top. There's also some local wisdom that's just looking at different lenses at this aspiration we all have of describing an effective physician. So that's kind of my pithy take on all of that conversation.
Thank you very much, Stan. Fedde, a couple of comments?
Stan, from the Dutch point of view, I'm looking at change management again. I would like to adopt people as well as they can. I would feel that all rewriting would be rubbish, but perhaps in the change management and making it their own flavored project, it might be important for us too, but I'll try to avoid that work because it's not necessary, but for change management, maybe.
Thank you. I see two other people standing in line for brief comments. Please go ahead and let us know who you are.
Hi, my name is Naomi Galanka. I'm from Victoria. I must commend you all on this wonderful work. It's very, very exciting. I think we talk a lot about the competency and EPAs and milestones, but what about that for this CanMEDS itself? How is a formative assessment going to be done? I know there's a bit of a history already that it seems to be working, it seems to be adopted by a lot of people, but where is it for itself? How do we assess the competency, or where is that, I guess, maybe even objective data that takes us forward and says this really works, this really does achieve our long-term goal?
So I'll take that one.
Yeah, Kelly.
So I think that's a wonderful question to call out for all of us. We have probably a moral obligation to evaluate this framework. And the truth is, while every aspect of CanMEDS has an evidence base of its own, we've never done a study that shows the impact of rolling out a version of CanMEDS through a system. And we have opportunities to do that as new places in the world start to use CanMEDS before and after. We just haven't done it yet, and it's one of my few regrets.
It's interesting. I had a discussion with some individuals from Chile who are using CanMEDS, about to use CanMEDS, and we have a wonderful natural experiment there where we could actually look at that. Kelly?
From my perspective, I think it gets down to what I refer to as the journey. The completion of CanMEDS is a part of that journey towards assessing our outcomes. That's the work we have ahead of us. We need to stop thinking about what are the right ways to organize our competencies and start thinking about how do we actually lump them together in appropriate assessment that is synthetic and covers collaborator and communicator and medical expert at the same time in an appropriate context, because that's the next step in the journey to actually achieving the outcomes that David Ash referred to.
Thank you. Gentleman over here?
Yes, actually, Kelly, I think, was getting to the point of my question. First of all, congratulations, spectacular work, as others have said. But I think one of the concerns, and this maybe is anticipating the 10 o'clock session, by the way, Tom Cooney, Oregon Health Sciences University, also Journal of Graduate Medical Education. How do we avoid this sort of either reductionist or deconstructed view that Kelly alluded to? And since Dr. Scheele's up there and work with EPAs and other related things, this is an critical framework, but it's in some ways a taxonomy rather than the tool for work-based assessment, which residency is.
Thank you. Fedde wants to jump in with a brief answer.
I think that's another plea for a holistic approach using these building bricks that we got from CanMEDS.
Thank you. We've got time for one more comment.
Yeah, just a quick question. Louis Francis Gutty, I'm one of the past presidents of the Royal College. At our convocation last night, our current president reminded us that the Governor General in October 2012 told the profession that it better start meeting society's needs. When we take a look at an Ipsos Reid survey from 2003 to 2013, in every category, when Canadians were asked about their physician, there was a precipitous drop, whether they thought we were intelligent, up-to-date, caring, and there was a 30% drop in compassion. The recent Commonwealth Fund put Canada pretty well at the bottom of any international comparison in terms of how our healthcare system performs. The States came in last only because they spend more. So how are we going to create a sense of urgency while we're all here believing in this? The reality is when you measure our performance, we're really not doing as well as we should be. So I'm a big believer in this, but what I don't see is that sense of urgency that is being transferred to both the teachers and the learners, that we really have to pull up our socks and quickly, because governments are not very pleased with how physicians are performing these days.
Thank you, Louis. Kelly?
From my perspective, what I see happening in the States is I actually see the growing sense of urgency. I see us actually creating brand new ways for us to begin to tackle the problem. My own institution doing a curriculum redesign for a College of Medicine, and it's not a reshuffle and it's not a reorganization, it's a complete redesign. And I see that happening time and time again. So on the ground, I think we're beginning to see it. It's time for us to quit thinking about why we should do something. It's time for us to actually just start to go do it. I think of it in terms of a culture change. We're waiting for the culture to change. When we actually just stop and take a deep breath, the culture has changed. That work's done. It's time to now go do it. And I think that's the challenge ahead of us on our journey.
Can I make 30 seconds?
30 seconds.
This is actually transitioning from the theme of this conference, which is what are the other models that are out there that we can adopt? What is the essence of what we should be teaching? That's ICRE 2015. I'm going to give you a little plug for ICRE 2016, which is the quality conference. It's how can we take what we know about what we need to do and all these medical education methods and science that we now have, and how can we really fundamentally change how we train physicians? That's next year. That's what we're going to work on.
Okay, Fedde insists on the last word.
It's another plea to merge this whole CanMEDS movement with health systems innovation. They're friends. You can use both.
Thank you very much, and I'd like to thank all the panel for your very insightful comments. So please join me in a round of applause for the panel. And now it's time to celebrate. So I've pushed the button, Mr. AV person, and nothing's happening. There we go.
Well, a huge congratulations to the Royal College on this work. You are truly leading the way in the Canadian health system around patient safety, embedding it in the education competencies for those that you are educating. So hopefully everybody else is going to take your lead and go down this path. Congratulations.
I think Dr. Jason Frank and Dr. Yvion Dessin really deserve the thanks of the nation. They have been amazing leaders on this initiative.
Finalement, je crois que c'est important de vraiment féliciter le Collège Royal pour cet effort. Je pense que ça va avoir un impact très important sur le futur de la médecine au Canada.
I think the new CanMEDS 15 framework is going to be very helpful in building the better Canadian healthcare system that we all want, the one in which our patients receive better care and we are proud to work in.
Félicitations à tous les partenaires, surtout au Collège Royal, pour le lancement de ce document important, le CanMEDS 2015.
Well, I'd like to congratulate the Royal College and especially Jason Frank and also the other members of his team for making this activity such an inclusive one. I think that this is an example of how we should be moving forward in terms of developing future projects in Canada.
I would like to congratulate the Royal College and all of the partners who brought this project to fruition.
Big congratulations to everybody and the teams who have been involved in this very collaborative process, and special congratulations to a number of folks, including our staff members, who have worked tirelessly towards this particular goal. So once again, congratulations.
Je voudrais en profiter pour féliciter le collège, remercier toute l'équipe qui a travaillé très fort, Jason Frank, Linda Snell, Jonathan Charbonneau.
Cynthia Abbott, pour mentionner ceux-là, remercier tout le bureau d'éducation sous la direction de Ken Harris, tous les contributeurs, tous les gens qui ont travaillé dans les groupes de travail, le comité aviseur, le comité intégrateur et aussi également tous les membres du comité consultatif francophone qui ont fait le marathon de révision dans les 6 derniers mois pour arriver à ce magnifique document. Merci à tous.
Congratulations to the Royal College on the Saturday launch of CanMEDS 2015. I think we should all be really proud with what's gone into this process, and it's going to make our medical education system better. And at the end of the day, we're in medical education to become doctors and to be serving our patients, and having a high quality curriculum is what's going to make us do that. So we should be proud not only of the fact that we've got a really good medical education system with CanMEDS 2015 as a part of it, but that we're going to do good things for all of our patients.
It's our hope in the future that all of those who have participated in the National Advisory Committee in the development of this new CanMEDS framework will continue to adapt, and use it as they go forward with the future of medical education, and as we move to a competency-based system which provides individuals with the opportunity to demonstrate their performance in all of the CanMEDS roles. We hope that this can be adopted as a national framework for every physician practicing within Canada.
So just in case you hadn't figured it out, those people were members or leaders of the organizations who were part of the National Advisory Committee, all of whom were integrally involved in the development of CanMEDS 2015, and I think most importantly, all of whom have adopted it. This is the first time that there's been a national competency framework that has truly been a national competency framework. So thank you all to all of the members of the National Advisory Committee. I'd like to now introduce the President of the Royal College, Dr. Kevin Imrie, who's going to come up for a few words.
Thank you so much, Linda, and thanks very much, Jason and Kelly and Fedde and Marie-Louise, for a really, truly fantastic plenary. I think the plenary did a really, really good job in terms of starting and rooting in the patient experience, the needs of the patient on the front line in the emergency department. The history of the evolution of competency frameworks internationally, the reason why CanMEDS is such an important project, and it was really wonderful to see the incredible alignment internationally. For those countries that are utilizing CanMEDS or have adapted or adopted CanMEDS, but also really the close similarity that we see with the ACGME competencies as well. I particularly want to congratulate Jason and the team on a truly Herculean effort. It was really, really wonderful over the last 3 years to see the intensely consultative work that went on to truly start with a competency framework for specialty resident education in Canada and really come out the other end with a competency framework for the medical profession in Canada, but tremendously useful to our international partners, and also a competency framework that's truly valuable for other allied health professions. It's really been an immensely successful project and one at which you and your team really deserve a round of applause and congratulations. I'm actually particularly proud that this is the first ICRE conference that I'm presiding at as president, and that this is such a major milestone in itself. CanMEDS has really served our profession exceptionally well for the last decade. CanMEDS 2015 will serve our profession and will be of benefit to our allied professions for the decade to come. And as been alluded to already, you probably have a short window of time before the process of starting for CanMEDS 2025 begins, because of the critical need for this to be a living, breathing document that's constantly relevant and that helps guide, that it is not just a framework, but really truly helps guide our teaching and our assessment. So at this point in time, I would like to invite Ivy Anderson, co-chair of the National Advisory Committee and the Director of Education at the College of Family Physicians of Canada, to the lectern.
Good morning, and thank you, Dr. Emery, for the opportunity to share further congratulatory greetings on behalf of the CanMEDS National Advisory Committee. Many of the individuals on that committee you saw just previously on the video. When the Royal College first launched its renewal process, in its wisdom, it invited 12 key partners and stakeholders to provide advice. That's always a good change management strategy. Through the process, the Royal College asked for input from each of our organization's members and constituents, and we gave it. And through the dialogues that we had, almost monthly meetings, we saw an opportunity for a broader vision, the development of a physician CanMEDS competency framework that could be agreed upon and endorsed by all of our organizations. By listening and incorporating our input, we did it. We created a renewed Canadian competency framework for physicians in our country that is used and will continue to be used, not only here, but in other countries, influencing change. We, as physicians and educators in this room, are all part of and committed to healthcare and medical education systems in all of our countries. We are working towards the same outcome, better patient care through better physician education and health professions education. By aligning our work, we can come closer to our collective mission. By collaborating and leveraging each other's strengths, resources during a time of fiscal restraint, and opportunities that come before us, we can achieve our collective goal. It shouldn't matter who crosses the finish line first. It shouldn't matter who says they have the better framework or better approach. What is most important is that we are working together, learning with and from each other for the purpose of improving our health systems and providing better care to our patients. Thank you to the Royal College, and particularly to you, Jason. You've brought a national and international team together. It's now time for those of us in this room to create more teams, broader teams, to bring the spirit and intent of CanMEDS, the competency framework, into your own contexts and settings. Good luck to all of us as we continue to be catalysts for change for our healthcare systems. Congratulations again.
Thank you, Dr. Aimley, Dr. Anderson. Now, just before we officially launch CanMEDS 2015, a reminder to everyone, please fill out your evaluations. I can't say evaluation forms anymore because you should be doing it on the app, or you can go outside and do it on the computers out there. I encourage you to go to the Get Connected at the ICRE booth in the exhibit hall and learn how to tweet and how to otherwise better use your devices. And if you haven't done so yet, please consider signing up for a mentorship program. If you have a question about your career, about a research question, or just want to meet a very cool medical educator, go outside to the registration desk and see who you can chat to briefly. So I'd like to invite Jason, who always wants to have the last word, to give us some last words.
Thank you. Is there another slide? This is the third time I've had the privilege of standing in front of the profession and talking about CanMEDS. It's 10 years away is the next version. This is probably my last. It's a privilege. And so I wanted to just take a moment of your time to say a few thank yous. Can I ask the CanMEDS team from the Royal College to please stand up wherever you are in the room? There's a few of you here. They're probably already standing at the back. I want to call out that this is a team that is so dedicated to supporting all of us, that we're all so proud of. They're very effective. If you interacted with them during this project, you know they're right on the ball. They coordinated everything across all the time zones of the world, and they're a pleasure to work with. I'm really proud of you all. And in particular, I want to highlight Cynthia Abbott, who's over on this side of the room, who's really an amazing manager, who sequenced everything and made it work. You can't steal her. Can I ask the members of the International Advisory Committee please stand up? That includes Sam Albanian, Sally Davies, Jean-François Denef, Richard Doherty, Bob Englander, James Godoli, Peter Harris, Mary Lawson, Ingrid Philibert, I think, is here, Doris Ostergaard, Stephanus Snyman, Fedde Scheele, Marie-Louise Stokes, Ole Tenkat, Tim Swanwick, Simon Williams. I thank all of you. You shaped the project. There were many elements that our discussions on the phone changed. And I'd like to give you a round of applause as well. Thank you. Could I have the members of the National Advisory Committee stand up? Many of you are in the room. Ivy and I co-chaired. Ivy, I've said it many times, you're a wonderful partner to play with. Thank you. Ian Bomer, Ford Bursey, Nick Busing, Charles Faubert, Kathy Gillis, Lisa Graves, Ken Harris, my boss, Kevin Emery was there, Florence Lefebvre from the regulatory authorities, Anne-Marie McClellan, who's always a joy to work with as well, Jenny Monod, Julien Poitras, Charmaine Roy, Cam Runkta, Sam Saracena, Linda, Kent Stobart, Gary Tithcott, one of the undergraduate deans in Canada, Gord Wallace, you're a wonderful partner, Parveen Wasi, Jim Wilson, Roger Wong, Dell Atkinson, Glenn Bandier, André Boucher. You drove this project. Your fingerprints are all over this, and I thank you for your dedication to healthcare, and a hand for you too. I have an extra special thanks for André Boucher, who's not here at the moment. André Boucher helped us to not only write CanMEDS in English, but she also took on editing all of CanMEDS and every milestone en français. So this document is produced in 2 languages for the world. And translating it, this is not translation. These are physicians who are bilingual, who rewrote every word of the framework in the last few months and made the print deadline, much to Cynthia's delight, in order for the language to really make sense for those who are using French. And that is a yeoman's task. So they worked with a group of people. Julien Poitras, I think, is here. Wonderful work, and I'm so, so grateful for all that you did, starting during the summer in Canada last year. And the summer's short in Canada, by the way. If you are an author, a contributor to any of the expert working groups, will you please stand up? I know that there are many of you here. You're being shy. There's about 225 people were co-authors of this framework, approximately, including our expert working group chairs. Many of them were clinician educators. You're wonderful. It's your thoughtfulness that shaped this. I hope when you open CanMEDS or when you're teaching at the bedside, you remember, I wrote that. That's my line. This is how I phrase this concept that we're dedicated to. You're clever and you're dedicated, and I thank you. To Linda and John, who are the co-editors of the core framework, we're the 3 amigos, and I can't say enough publicly about how we all share a brain, and I'm frightened by what I see. But it's been a delight, and I thank you for all the things you've done over the last 3 years. So to finish this off, we wanted to do a launch. Some of you wanted us really to do some fanfare. You wanted balloons. You wanted maybe bagpipers, perhaps jugglers.
Jason, stop. We're not doing bagpipes. We're not doing balloons. Will you please come over here? I have something for you.
Okay. I'm afraid.
You should be. Okay. So on behalf of everyone, we wanted to give you a CanMEDS.
Okay. Is it a pony?
No. Better shake it. You don't know what's in it.
All right. Let's see what it is.
Oh my.
Better be appropriate for the web. So with this, I declare CanMEDS is now live.